Hola, hola, and buenos dias, GnGs. My name is Trekkw2ks, and welcome to another episode of Week in Crypto, brought to you here on the Gentleman Crypto Network. And so, if you don't know, the basic idea is I cover crypto-related news stories that happen between a Friday and a Sunday, pop them out 08 Monday morning. And I do it with a no price talk filter. So I'm not talking about charts, I'm not talking about DGen stuff, I'm not showing you market sentiment. None of that. It's literally the things that scratch my brain and I think are relevant to pick up because they are either indicators, trends, or patterns of how the industry is developing and growing as we move towards mass adoption. And everyone swears that it's like the pro thing to have mass adoption. But anywho, I got a couple of things as usual. I'll start off with like a whole bunch of things and then I got to funnel it down into these handful of stories. And for today's thing, I'm like under 10, which I was really kind of slicing it through. But anywho, I'm gonna get into that in a minute. As for housekeeping, this segment is brought to you by CJ the Smart Guy. He is a certified CPA. He particularly focuses on folks who have been dealing with cryptocurrencies, as well as if you're a business that deals with cryptocurrencies or looking to. Link for his stuff is in the description. In full disclosure, he is my actual CPA. This is not me getting any kind of kickback. This isn't a referral link of any type. It's just simply, here's his contact. I'm not telling you you have to use him, but it's more so about if you are doing your due diligence in finding a crypto focused CPA, here is someone that you can use as a reference to understand better what a crypto focused CPA should be saying to you if you are in this space. I'm saying he's been here for a number of years. He's also spoken at the Black Blockchain Conference. He's spoken at other events too. So he's not a newbie. And like I said, I use him because if you're in this American jurisdiction, you got to cross your T's and dot your I's because, yeah, we're at this point now. But nonetheless, let's jump into these episodes and we'll go from there, right? All right, here we are on the first story. So, we're jumping into local and international. So we're heading to, Latin America, as well as jumping into Asia story or two, as well as the Middle East and stuff like that. And so, first one to start off here is how stablecoins, well, title is how to use stablecoins for everyday transactions. Now, I read the article and I was just like, all right, where are we going with this? What's the point on this? Cointelegraph, I got a gripe about the article. It gives you, the basic understanding, but what my gripe is about the way that it is leaving out what the full cons are for, at least in my opinion, and well as some other people's opinion who understand how stablecoins work on the back end, for the companies that actually are the operators and like owners or creators of the stablecoin. So case in point, again, it tells you the different ways you can use it as far as online, the whole gift card thing, the whole finding vendors, the difference between the fiat-based, the algorithm, or the crypto-based ones. It tells you all of that stuff. It gives you a little bit as far as like the negative of the price depegging, the value depegging from the underlying asset. But what it doesn't tell you about is how the operators, owners, creators of the stablecoins have the ability to freeze and reverse transactions. And in my opinion, if you are looking at this from a privacy standpoint or from a economic or financial sovereignty standpoint, meaning you have positive control of your financial instrument, that to me is a very, very, very big thing, which arguably means we're kind of glossing over and rewriting the importance of financial privacy, of financial sovereignty, of positive control of your actual asset, of your financial instrument. If the issuer of that crypto has the ability to freeze, reverse, and pause a transaction, even though you're, quote, the one who's supposed to be the owner of that financial instrument, of that crypto, quote, product, do you really own it then? Do you really have positive control? And articles like this, in my opinion, are misleading the newer folks coming into the space, and even the older folks, because it's some people who are just coming to mess with stablecoins. The other thing to note is like initial use case for stablecoins was just to work as your arbitrage medium so that you avoided slippage between exchanges or between trades. Now we're talking about, hey, you could use this in everyday transactions, which I'm not saying no to that, but it's interesting to watch how the stablecoin utility use case has evolved, but at the same time, we're negating to mention in full scope the cons of stablecoins, namely that the privacy thing is out the window, because even in this article it tells you to like go through the whole thing of KYCing and how KYC is like a pro and it's all positive, and it's like, nah, it's also a negative when you KYC. Again, that's my personal gripe. If you disagree with me, comments is open. I'm here for it right now. If you agree with me, great. I hope we have the same understanding of why KYC in this regards is not a good thing. But if we don't, it is what it is. Nonetheless, this is the kind of stuff where I'll be saying, like, you got to watch out for, like, what are these news platforms trying to, quote, educate you on? What are they trying to get you to understand? And is it actually how the space operate, or what's actually going on? Or are they trying to move you in a direction? This is why you got to do your due diligence. All right. Going into this next story. Okay, so next story here is Congress aims to save crypto firm from SEC auditing hurdle. So basically, a couple of lawmakers have gotten together, and this is seen as a, quote, bipartisan thing, where U.S. lawmakers launched bipartisan effort to repeal the SEC's crypto custody accounting rule, citing burdening lack of transparency. Now, this is arguably focused at the commercial level, meaning like the businesses, the financial institutions, that side of it, as opposed to the retail level, which is more mom and pop accounting, stuff like that, right? And so my thing that kind of gets me with this one, also, this is a horrible AI generated thing. Y'all could have definitely did better on whatever you inputted, and that you're just showing the White House as opposed to like the SEC building or the congressional or one of the congressional buildings. Y'all got to do better. Daily Coin, y'all got to do better. Y'all got to do better. Here's my thing with this. Where is it? It's the who's a part of this. So Cynthia Luminous, if you've been listening to me for any amount of time, I'm not necessarily the biggest fan of her and what I think is how her agenda looks. The other folks that are named on this, I'm not that familiar with them, but just the fact of that Loomis is the head person, and I got questions. Is this a Song and Pony? Is this a Song and Pony show? Is she looking out in the best interest of just the business sector? Because she does have X amount of connection into the Wall Street stuff, because she has a legal finance background. Okay. So I'm not necessarily 100% sure on this one. I guess we'll see as the year progresses if this makes any headway as far as getting momentum for more Congress folks to see a positive for voting for this, or whether, and a matter of fact, I got another story that connects into this situation potentially, as far as how in the back end of the lobbying conversations, we'll see if down the road this does lead to more push for Congress to be able to revote. Because you got to understand, right? Pardon. The SEC is the administrative agency dealing with the Securities and Exchange stuff, but they were put together and given their mission by Congress. So arguably, Congress should be able to come back in and be like, hey, you guys, you're overreaching in how you're doing certain things, and we need to reel you back in and like realign you in certain regards. Congress should be able to do that. The question is, will they get enough votes in order to say, all right, now we're going to have the official hearing, the official processes to be like, we need to start reviewing some of the rules and policies that you guys have been enacting. That's the bottom line of this situation. Will it actually go to that? Not certain. I'm still questioning, is this a dog and pony show, just because of all the things going on right now within the political landscape, as well as what's going on within the congressional and the SEC settings. Because you got to remember, they may pose to be foes in public, but behind the scenes, we've seen the FOIA request that came out about Elizabeth Warren and how she was in contact with Gary Gensler on what the hearing would be about and what the talking points would be and how the questions would be framed. So again, I asked the question, is this thus a dog and pony show? And will it really amount to anything? Time will tell. We'll leave it there. Damn, I have a dry throat right now. Woo. All right. Next story here is Crypto Mom disagrees with SEC's denial of petition to amend gag rule. I really am annoyed that they keep referring to Hester Pierce as the Crypto Mom, because in my mind it's like, well, how do you work as the warden and then be called friend to prisoners? Like, you work for the prison. You can't be a friend to prisoners if you work for the prison. It doesn't make sense to me. But anywho, the basic idea behind this story, oh, they didn't do an image thing, is that there was a petition put together. Where's the name of the agency that does it? It's one of the like nonprofit legal agencies. There we are. The New Civil Liberties Alliance basically is petitioning the SEC and saying, hey, this gag rule you guys put in place for when you make your allegations against them and then they sign certain things, but then they can't say anything after the fact. It's not fair. This should not be a thing. Now, I think that largely this is being brought up because of how there's this unequal application of the law for crypto related companies. And it doesn't work the same way for traditional finance related companies. Because we understand, I think at this point, that, you know, traditional banks, traditional personalities within the financial sector have done and said things that if they were any other type of entity or person, they would have been in jail, if not in jail and given a heavy levy of a fine, right? So the thing here being, hey, this rule that you have as far as gagging people as it being part of the standard procedure doesn't make sense, because that's not how you guys are doing it, and you seem to be going extra hard on crypto companies. Now, most folks don't remember, if you weren't here before like 2017, 16, there were a number of cases going on back in 14 and like 15 and stuff. Like, you had the DOJ stuff, you had the stuff going on with the IRS, you had the FBI cases going on, and then like the SEC stuff doesn't start to pick up until like 16 into 18. And then there's still cases that have not been revealed yet. There's still stuff that like they were being investigated back then, but the stuff is coming out now because it's being unsealed. But the investigation and the charges were like 3, 4, 5, 6 years back. The point being is that the application of these policies and rules in relation to the crypto related businesses and personalities within the space are not equal or being fair when you compare it to other sectors. So that's why the Civil Liberties Alliance put this in, as well as Hester Pierce making the point of like, hey, this isn't fair. We really should get rid of this rule, which came up in 1972. Again, I look at it and go, are we going to see change in the SEC within this year or maybe this decade? Because look at this whole thing about what's the thing called? The Huey test, as far as this question of like, well, how do you figure out if something is a security or not? Are we at a point now where this thing is over nearly 100 years old, or at least above 70 years old? And when do we get to the point where we question like, all right, we need to reevaluate this metric because the technological landscape has totally changed. And for what was the norm of the day, we are not there anymore. Yes, you know, we have scammers and we have people who do questionable things, ethically based and stuff like that. But if you look at what the basis of the financial instruments were back then, largely based on the technology aspect and largely based on centralizing the availability and distribution, management, and governance of the stuff, we're in a very different place right now. Just throwing that out there. You can disagree with me or you can agree with me. It's okay. Comments is open. You got to remember, we don't delete the comments. If you don't see it, it's not us. 9 times out of 10, it's YouTube messing around with stuff. Yeah, there's a whole thing going on right now with even how the viewer count numbers and stuff like that work and the likes. Like the other day on the last live, I had 4 thumbs down, and by the end of the video, and I looked at it like maybe 30 minutes later, the dislikes were gone. I don't know how that worked. the thumbs up were there, and even though the thumbs up weren't as high as the number of people who were watching, I don't know, the YouTube be doing what it do, y'all. That's all I gotta say. But yeah. So is this going to result in something? No, because basically the SEC told them to kick rocks. We're not changing the rules. This is how we do stuff. Like I said, we'll see how this year plays out. There's a lot of different, situations happening. And then in the bigger thing of, we'll see what happens in this decade. There might be something that jars the SEC, or at least jars Congress, to go back in and have to do some augmentation on how the SEC operates. Right? We'll see what happens. And in this story, Coinbase enlists former British minister on its advisory council. This story scratched my brain because being on an advisory council, depending on what it is, sometimes there's a monetary gain that works to it. Like, hey, would you sit on our council? We'll, dole you out this amount of money to be here for X amount of meetings, or at least to help us achieve, this particular goal. And what this to me, all right, let me get y'all to the TLDR part of it, right? So Coinbase enlists former British Prime Minister George Osborne on its Global Advisory Council. Appointment push pro crypto policy support. Here's the part that they leave out in the TLDR. Osborne is being put in this position so that he can be one of the people who will talk to the PACs, which is the super PAC, actually. Where's it at? Where is it at? Because they give the name of one of the super PACs. There it is. So Coinbase is contributing to a super PAC called Fair Shake. And if you don't know, PAC is the Political Action Committee. So the idea of what they're looking to do is every place that they can apply the political influence in or on via a PAC, which is the Political Action Committee, where you basically contribute money in to sponsor being able to talk to regulators. The idea is this is a globally known man, Osborne, because British former position, and he knows who's the who. There's a level of he's already connected. All right, we got this guy on our team now. He's also going to be able to interact and help voice our opinion and view within the PAC. We're contributing X amount of money within this situation, and so I'm not going to say pay for play, but like this is a different angle of the lobbying element. And if you read this article, you'll see that there are also some other mentions in here. So like Andreessen Horowitz is also a big contributor to PACs, and they have their hand in Fair Shake 2, as well as other PAC related agencies or groups, I should say, or committees. Really, committee is the word. So why does this matter? Because in my mind, what you're going to end up seeing over, and like, yeah, we're in this political cycle as far as here in the US, but I think what we'll see happen as we progress through the decade is this will be the norm thing of where you'll hear certain names being or certain personalities being affiliated or associated or brought on as advisory councils. And that's gonna be part of the new lick. Like if you want to catch a couple, 1,000, 100,000, I don't know what the numbers exactly are. I should probably Google that. Like how much does somebody sitting on an advisory council make? This is gonna be the new lick, and especially if you have X amount of like a national position. So if you're a small crypto company and you want to expand your national footprint, well, what do? You get the advisor who has more understanding or more connection within the national border of whatever country jurisdiction you're in. If you want to do the expansion on the global stage, what do? You get the person who has the influence and connection and the know-how on the global stage, right? If you want to go for a particular market, you get that person who is connected to what? The European market, aka Mr. Osborne. If you want to expand into the Latin American market, what do? You get somebody who has the international connection or that local connection in that market. You get somebody from Brazil. You get somebody who is known in Panama. Like I called this a while ago. I said we getting into 2024. When we get there, you're going to see a lot of shifting around. These exchanges, as well as other types of crypto related companies, are going to start pulling in people from more traditional sectors of the political sphere and the financing economic sphere. And even within the what's the word I'm looking for, the traditional tech ecosystem. It's not going to be all of the new folks who are like new entrepreneurs, new political pundits, or new tech gurus. It's going to be X amount of the folks who got like that 10 plus year in seasoning within that arena. And this, lo and behold, is exactly what we're seeing play out right now. Just saying. This is the pattern. But the other part that I'm brought this up for in particular was that the advisory committee stuff and talking about PACs, crypto exchanges, or crypto related companies. I haven't seen an article that was bringing all three of those things together until this one. Now, granted, we've talked about lobbying and stuff, but I haven't heard any mention of PACs like that. So I think that this is the more notable indicator of crypto related companies are moving into getting their foothold in PACs. And this is part of how it will play out. You get the heavy hitters like this. Just putting that out there, something else to see as we move along in this decade. And the next story. UAE Central Bank initiates historic cross-border digital Dirham transfer to China. I know 8 times out of 10 I am not saying that right, but basically UAE just put its blue dog in the CBDC dog show. If you don't understand, if you don't know what the Dirham is, I think I'm saying that right. So basically that is their CBDC. And I said this X amount of months back in last year that you're going to see. My thought process was, if I'm understanding what's going on correctly, there are over 120 different CBDC projects across the globe. There's 200 countries on the globe, with 200 different types of countries. There's 100 and about 30 something different CBDC projects. UAE has just officially entered the dog and pony show of CBDCs. And they did it with who? They did it with the C state. You see the name on the screen. I said this last year. You're going to see countries doing direct CBDC deals, like how we do fiat exchanges between different countries. I think we're going to see deals of CBDCs directly between countries. And so granted, this is just the beta test to see that they can have a direct line to the C-state financial system. That's all that this confirms. Other thing to remember, and I think it was in December that I covered the story, the R state did the same thing with the UAE during December. I think it was December, it might have been November, but I know more than likely it was December. I think I covered the story. So the UAE is going to start making more public moves in directly connecting with the CBDC related products or product with who it wants to deal with, like making direct deal of, hey, we'll have our I don't know what the word is, the phrase is right now. It's not that's not like the memorandum of understanding. It's not that. It's like, hey, we're going to do financial transactions using this CBDC, and they probably might put like caps on like how much of the amount might be. Like, all right, well, we'll try to do at least like 5 million in the first half of the year or the first quarter or whatever in like monetary value, but within this financial medium of CBDCs that is also considered a financial instrument, right? We're going to see more of this happening. And in my mind, I definitely see the UAE setting out for more partnership deals in this regards. The C state already did Hong Kong, and they already did something with Singapore. Like I said, our state already did their thing with the UAE. So arguably, the East is already like, they stepping out there. And I don't see what the US or even the EU has to be like, oh, look at what we're doing. I'm not counting any of the crypto related things as far as like Ripple or like the UST, USDT or any of that stuff. Only on the end of, I'm talking about like what are the official governments doing? That's a separate thing from the crypto related stuff. I I don't know. Maybe I'm not paying enough attention. But it doesn't look like you know how you could be like, oh well, maybe we're just being the tortoise in the comparison of the tortoise and the hare story. And granted, the East is like running out there like the hare doing what they're doing, and then the West is just being the tortoise, and it's like nah. The East has been pretty patient. Arguably, the East is the tortoise in this scenario, and they've laid down the groundwork and the foundation well enough that now that they're actually launching these products into beta and then real world market application, they are okay and stable enough that like there's no going down for them. It's us and when I say us, I mean being here in the West, as far as being in the US or being in Europe, England, stuff like that. We jumped out the gate and then we did other things as far as like the regulatory stuff that I don't think is as advantageous as some folks would like to make it sound. Having the SEC be the heavy-handed, everyone wants to look at what DC is doing to be like, oh, all right, well, if the US DC does it, like then it's going to be okay. Or like having the US be able to jump into other people's jurisdictions and make them kowtow. I don't think that's an advantageous thing in the long run, but that's just my take on it. You don't got to agree with me. I was watching something the other day, and was it a Mos Def interview? It might have been Mos Def, but somebody was making a point of how look at the history and go into any museum and look at how anytime a country or empire looks to be the big block bully and like dominate all of what they can quote or see as being their right to do, eventually time shows you get toppled or you get forgotten or you lose that strong foothold that you had for a while. He didn't word it like that, but that was the basic gist of like, you can't sit on top forever. And if you keep being a bully, history will show you where you're going to end up. Just throwing that out there. So yeah, this happened and it is what it is. Next joint, I did kind of a clickbait thing with this one as far as El Salvador saying, F off to the IMF, which arguably is kind of what they are doing. I seen another article that was talking about how the predictions are Bukele's going to win re-election by a landslide. And if you don't know, the way that El Salvador's system is set up, you can't be a president sitting and then run for re-election. So Bukele basically did this thing where he dropped out or stepped down from his presidency in order to be able to actively campaign to be re-elected. And then the person who is sitting in there now is pretty much, one of his people. And so the way it looks is like, hey, he's going to win. Unless something really crazy left field happens, he's going to win. And everyone that was on his team in this go is coming along. And it still holds to show that he's like, yeah, we're not dropping Bitcoin as a legal tender. It's going to keep pushing. And so, we're going to see how this plays out. I mean, the odds are pretty much all in his favor. And unless some really left field situation, black swan event, something happens, we're going to see how it works out for El Salvador. Will El Salvador be Hong Kong in, another 20 years? And will this part or point in history of Bitcoin, of El Salvador standing its ground and not kowtowing to the IMF, as well as pushing on having Bitcoin be its legal tender, will this be a part of the history that makes it something of a Hong Kong down the road? And I have another thing that I want to throw out on this, in that we're making, not we, but the idea that why is this such a big thing? Because the Central African Republic made Bitcoin legal tender last year, but you hardly hear anything about the government and that story. Like they had a couple of stories here and there last year. I covered what I at least came up on my radar in relation to them, and I've also had other conversations with people about things going on there. Case in point, there is a heavy R state influence or presence, I should say presence, in the Central African Republic. And so in my mind, I'm where am I going with this? There was a story that came out last year about I want to say the president's son being in Russia. Ooh. There was a story that came out last year about I want to say the president's son being in the R state, and like he was having some issue at the airport or something like that. And I was talking to somebody else later on, and they were saying like, yeah, there's a definite presence of folks from the R state in the Central African Republic. And so I bring this up to the point of why is there this focus on El Salvador and IMF, as well as the whole like, hey, you shouldn't make Bitcoin legal tender, but there's no seemingly pushback around the Central African Republic doing it for the way that El Salvador gets this attention and limelight. I've been wondering that for a bit right now, only because it's just something on my radar of how is it that this area over this country gets attention and it's seen as like, oh my God, like this can't happen. But yet this country over here in Africa, no one barely mentions anything. And I do wonder if the presence of the R state folks has anything to do with that. Just throwing that out there. Again, y'all know I be paying attention to a couple of different things and I kind of cross-reference stuff. And it's, I guess it's one of those like time will tell things. That'll be the bigger part of it. Time will tell how well this works out for El Salvador, as well as what will be the situation with the Central African Republic down the road, and what does their situation hold for them coming forward. But anywho, just a thought, throwing that out there. I guess to say hats off to Bukele and his folks, but I mean, he ain't win yet, but he's still holding his ground, so hats off to him on that. All right, next joint here. The Sea State police announced a multinational dollar cryptocurrency crackdown. So what I thought was awkward is that even though this information of the takedown was put on the official website of this, not division, but of this law enforcement agency in the Sea State, the way the article is written, the people at Bitcoinist Stimmy didn't take the time to actually go and look to see what the name of the company was, which is like, well, what the hell was the point of bringing it up if you don't name what the company is? Because apparently they had like over 10,000 registered users across the cities and the provinces. So they were able to do a couple 100 million with like over 10,000 or like near 20,000 people in their quote user base, even though the whole thing was quote a Ponzi. And then the other thing that I find, I don't want to say, I'm gonna go with the word misleading, is that they close out the article by saying, hey, the Sea State bans cryptocurrencies, but people are using cryptocurrencies via VPNs. The minutia or the devil in the detail is the Sea State bans the foreign companies, but they still are looking to let things happen locally speaking, as far as local companies. So case in point, there are things that you could do where if the company is registered in Hong Kong, you would still have access if you're on the mainland, even though the company is registered in Hong Kong. Versus you're trying to use Paxo or Coinbase or something like that. Like that's a no-no officially, but it doesn't mean you still aren't doing things on those platforms. It's a weird way in how the narrative is being spun around the Sea State's crypto activity. And at the same time, it's just like, but these platforms, these news platforms will still report on how, oh, look, they're doing blah, blah, blah with CBDC, or, oh, look, they're doing, this with some wallet thing. It I don't know. It just at times makes me wonder. Like, you guys need to stick with a official one side of the narrative, because in my mind, it's misleading for how things are actually going there. Because when I reach out to folks that I know who are in country, it doesn't sound as quote negative as the way news platforms like this make it sound here in the West, is my point. Anywho, that happened. Like 30 people got arrested, and basically, the money goes to where it goes, and people are going to jail. Like, I remember I was listening. There's a commentator dude that I pay attention to, who he makes the point about how in the C state, it's like, we'll tell you, hey, this is illegal, don't do this. And there's the unsaid understanding of, all right, I won't do it, and then you go off and do it, and it's like, but when we catch you, the punishment is going to be real. And that's what it seems like how it works, when I look at some of these other stories in relation to law enforcement stuff, within the C state. Like, don't do it, but when we catch you, we coming down heavy. And this is another thing. And this won't be the last story, y'all. That's the bottom line. Like, there's still going to be other people who do, quote, illegal things. That's it. And we're still going to hear crypto stories coming out of the C state. That's it. All right. This one here. So, hacker claims to have subpoena Discord, Binance, Coinbase user info. So, there's a story that came out basically about how someone was selling data on GitHub. And I think this is connected to that story, in that the person was able to also use the PII information from that. But in particular with this story here, there's a system called Codex Global. Well, it's a company called Codex Global, which is like a secured communication network between law enforcement and the different crypto-related businesses and exchanges and stuff like that. And so basically there was a malware that was put out last year, I think, that compromised law enforcement computer systems. And this person had access to the compromised systems and was basically able to get access to a Codex Global account, which basically is like, hey, we can go in and start targeting whale accounts and freezing people's assets within exchanges and within certain networks. Because again, you got to remember, the stable coins, the creators and operators of the stable coins can freeze and reverse transactions. So imagine what happens when someone who has access to the secure medium or the secure network, messaging network for law enforcement, reaches out to a Ripple or a Circle or Binance or whatever, and be like, yeah, this account, this wallet address, this user, blah, 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 blah. What do you think these folks are going to do? Which then gets into the question of this. Were the previous law enforcement generated activities done in full accordance with, there was a due process to it? It's like, hey, here's the court case, here's the judge thing, not just you send a secure message to the platform, it got taken in by whoever the assigned person is at the exchange, and then they just go into the system and with a click of a button freeze somebody's account, with a click of a button pause a transaction, in the click of a button delete somebody's account. You get what I'm saying? Like, this situation, and this is a whole other part of what I brought up earlier about the whole KYCing thing. There is a security risk that is increased when you KYC all of your users and then you put all of their information into one storage space. Like, there is no 100% security. There's no security person there should be no security person who will 100% guarantee that if you KYC everyone and then centralize all of the information, they can always 100% keep it safe and secure and not have any type of breach or leak. There's no one who should be able to say that, because it's not a 100% guaranteeable thing in cybersecurity. So with that being said, this situation, when I read the article, and granted, there could be some bullshit going on it for sure, but at base level, now that the information is publicly out there, that a system like this exists, it is only a matter of time before someone is actually able to start making these types of um, um, sabotage and attacks using this type of messaging system or using this network. Like, it's only a matter of time. In that you've now made it publicly available. And if you weren't already like in on the dark web, whatever stuff, well, now you know that this is a thing. So it's only a matter of time. Other thing to note is Binance was initially saying like, oh, that's not our data. That's not even, proof verified that that's us. Lo and behold, they send a takedown notice to GitHub that they need to close down the account that was basically selling the information. So here's the question. If it's not your data, why send a takedown notice? And if the people don't have, quote, the ability to do what they're doing, why make certain statements publicly? Binance is doing this. And again, I'm going to bring up this point. The new folks in charge, like, gone are the days of CZ, man. Like, he'd get out on Twitter and be like, yo, blah, 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 blah. This is this, this is that. And there was definitely a level of comfort. Even though you might not like all of what he said, I don't know, I sure didn't. There was still a level of like, all right, at least he came out and showed face and was saying stuff. We could at least look back now and be like, well, at least he was not afraid to like come out and say stuff. This new set of stuff or people running Binance, I don't know, man. It's not the same. And I still think there's some other wonky things going on behind the scenes with them. But anywho, so the bottom line is expect to start getting some bullshit spam email and other phishing types of attacks from stuff generated out of Coinbase, stuff generated out of Binance. If you're on Discord, you already know how funky Discord can get. But expect to get, see an uptick in that stuff. And then also realize like there's that delay of like the announcement comes out now about how stuff happened, but you might not start to notice it or see stuff for another couple of months. And like probably it will be after we get past the coming halvening for the Bitcoin network. That's when, because at that point, everyone's expecting the pump to happen on like everything. So, we'll get you then when you actually have the money and you want to start spending stuff or you want to start trading out or you want to start off ramping. Like the scammers are going to come then. Just keep that in your mind. Again, I'm not saying this to you as like, I'm the know-it-all expert. I'm not the financial advisor. I'm not the CPA. I'm not the lawyer. It's just, I've been here for a minute. And if you've been listening to any of us here on the network for a while, like, we've been around long enough to see the patterns, the trends, and the indicators, but we also highly, highly, highly encourage you to do your due diligence for whatever your personal situation is. So if you just got in here a month ago, a year ago, like, all right, like you may not have accumulated that much yet. But if you've been here for more than 2-3 years, if you was here before the whole C19 thing, you have an idea of what's up. You know that it's patterns to this thing. It's cycles to this thing. And we are in the season. We in the tax season. We coming up on the halvening. Like, it's a number of things coming into play. We in a political cycle right now here in the States. Meta just said that they're about to allow ETF commercials on their stuff. Facebook saying that they're going to do that. So like, it's going to be all types of shenanigans going on this year. I hope y'all are ready. I hope folks are doing their due diligence and don't get got. But yeah, let me get to this last story. So EU drafts paper regarding exceptions to the MiCA regulation. So the bottom line is there's a question on like, well, yes, we have some of the most progressive legal framing policies for how cryptocurrency should operate in the EU, and compared to like X number of the other first tier countries. I've heard it from more than one lawyer related person or regulatory related person that Europe is definitely ahead of the US and how their stuff is going. But at the same time, there's still the other part of like, hey, if we're being too heavy handed, we're going to start seeing companies offshore their footprint, meaning they'll probably stay registered in the countries that they're in, but then they'll take their operations and go someplace else with it. Or they'll just totally be like, all right, we're going to be out. So now what some of the regulators over there trying to do is trying to make exception, like write into policy exceptions of how they deal with um, companies marketing to acquire users versus the users actually going out and searching for the companies, or what part or how much of the company needs to stay in the country of origin versus how much they can just offshore or like pick up the whole thing and go. I mean, I feel like they should have thought about this beforehand, but everyone was so busy worrying about the money factor and how much money was being, quote, made in the space, and countries are trying to figure out how to get their cut of it. And then there's the other part that I noticed that no one likes to address now. It's capital flight control, people. Like, it's one thing for the companies to move around the way they move. It's the other thing about the user base of, all right, well, we don't want people just to be able to like take their capital and go wherever they want to go with it. So we have to figure out ways to lock down the industry that allows the people to do this financial activity. So yeah, they're saying that more talks will be up after April, and I guess we'll see how it plays out. Like, how much change are they really going to make? Or better yet, it's the same process here in the States, right? We have this grander idea of like, oh, we're going to throw out all these, we're going to put out all these different things that we want to do. But then when it actually gets to the Congress, everyone does their little thing of picking and prodding, poking and prodding what things they think are relevant and valuable. And then it's like, well, who's the backer behind that regulatory person who's saying, well, we need to take this out or we need to put that in. So the product that you start out with is not guaranteed to be the regulatory product you end up with at vote time. That's going to be the real catcher, right? We have this ideal thing of like, let's make sensible exceptions, but is it actually going to be like that at the end of this year or within 2025, whenever this thing actually comes to full legislative vote as far as Europe goes? I don't know, but it'll be one of the things I'm gonna watch, because they're gonna bring up more things as we move along. And so yeah, and okay, so here's the other part that I kind of wondered too, because of the stuff playing out with how the US is looking to push more sanctions and stuff, and have EU countries be partnered with our sanctions. When will we start to see the crypto stuff play into the sanctions against the R state and other parties? And I've been saying this for a little bit now. I definitely think there is a proxy situation playing out between the EU, or not the EU, but between the US and other Asian related countries, i.e. the C state as well as the R state, but they're not the only ones, is the bigger point. But I'm curious on when will that start, when will that connection start being made publicly within the EU? Because they got a whole bunch of things going on with them right now that the economies and stuff is not looking good, and the political situations is a whole nother animal. But anywho, those are the last that's the last thing I got right there for y'all. And so as I've said in the beginning, this segment is brought to you by CJ the Smart Guy. He's a CPA. Again, my official person that I'm using. I'm not saying this to you as though I get a kickback. There's no referral link. I'm just saying here's a resource that when you're doing your due diligence and finding your CPA person who actually knows about crypto, you have a comparison. If you choose him, great. That helps that man out and getting his coins together. And hopefully it helps you keep your coins, right? I can't guarantee any of the results for you because, again, I'm not the CPA. I'm just somebody who uses a CPA. And so link for that will be in the description. And as I forgot to say in the beginning, thank you for the folks who listen to the end of this. Thank you for the folks who are coming back and interacting with me in the live chat and stuff like that. Thank you for the folks who are encouraging as far as like, hey, good episode, and appreciate your breakdown, and that's the interesting point and stuff. And thank you for the lurkers. I appreciate y'all for just sitting in the background and watching, because the watch time still counts. And scammers, I appreciate y'all, because that means I'm doing something to where I'm generating. I ended up on your radar somehow, so that means I have to be generating some kind of metrics that you're counting. So I appreciate that. But I also do say 'tis the season, so folks, do pay attention, do be cautious, and I'm not going to reach out to y'all talking about no crypto project or no coin. Just remember that. I'm not going to do that. If I ain't talk to you directly, in some other kind of conversation, don't expect that to happen of me telling you about something with Bitcoin in a DM. Just saying. Other than that, folks, as I say, have a productive over busy day. If it can't be that, at least be in a safe space, in a safe place, in a good company. And from one human to the next, that is the best that I can wish you. And so, yeah, y'all, have a day.